Hello and welcome to Assembly Required Mass Online Rally 2. I am Christopher McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80 from the Full Force podcast, and joining forces with me for two special crossover panels today are the two gentlemen behind Articulated Points, which now makes this fully articulated. Patrick, Notpicard Stewart, and Philip, I'd rather be talking about Disney Donnelly. We will be looking at the histories behind two vehicles today, starting with the G.I. Joe Real American Hero Multi-Purpose Attack Vehicle, or the AV. Oh no, it's the VAMP, isn't it? Before we start talking about the vehicle itself, let's have a quick history lesson about the inspiration behind the toy's design. The origins of the Joe's first attack Jeep can be traced back to two very peculiar real-world vehicles, the XR311 and the Lamborghini Cheetah. A multi-purpose vehicle was developed as a private venture by the FMC Corporation called the XR311. The first of two prototypes were completed by 1970, and thanks to successful trials by the prototypes, the US military purchased 10 second-generation models in 1971. In 1977, Mobility Technology International commissioned Lamborghini to develop their own prototype multi-purpose vehicle on behalf of the US military, who wanted a new all-terrain vehicle. MTI provided Lamborghini with the basis of the design, which was largely a copy of the XR311. Rodney Farris designed the vehicle, and shortly after the Cheetah was revealed at the Geneva Motor Show in 1977, FMC took MTI and Lamborghini to court, but the action was later dropped. The Cheetah prototype was never tested by the US military, only demonstrated by the designer Rodney Farris, and eventually sold to Teledyne Continental Motors. Some call this a failure, but without these vehicles we wouldn't have the VAMP, so for me, it's an absolute multi-purpose victory. See guys, history can be fun. With the real-world inspiration in place, we can turn our focus to Hasbro and the 1982 A Real American Hero toy line. The VAMP was released in 1982, as I just said, in that first wave of product, and was an instant smash hit. The vehicle came boxed with a straight-arm version of the driver, clutch, and then the following year it was re-released with a swivel-arm version. Big thank you to Dan Klingensmith Jr. and his awesome officially licensed Creating G.I. Joe books. He has provided us with some awesome pre-production art from Wayne Luther, which you can find in his first book. So guys, let's get stuck into the VAMP then, shall we? Let's chat about that then, because obviously the presentation art very closely resembles what I think they said was the exterior of the Cheetah and the interior of the XR311. Now, were you guys aware of all that history beforehand?
I knew about the Cheetah, but not the XR311.
Yeah, same here. The Cheetah is one of those ones that's been around as far as knowledge among the G.I. Joe community for quite some time.
Yeah, I remember there was a panel, wasn't there, at one of the Joe cons? I think Daryl and Kirk. Am I right in saying that? Kind of divulge a lot of information around that.
I do remember one that Daryl did at one of the more recent G.I. Joe conventions that showed off the fact that they were considering doing a Lamborghini Cheetah, I think either for the 12-inch line or maybe it was for Super Joe, but I'm pretty sure it was for 12-inch. So the Cheetah was kind of considered for G.I. Joe even prior to the VAMP.
That's really interesting as well. I suppose, the time makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because we're talking 70s, early, so like 69, 71, 77, those kind of times. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that this vehicle was kind of up for the 12-inch. Kind of in terms of the artwork here, it does look effectively exactly as it kind of comes out as the toy, doesn't it? I mean, there's not much of a crazy difference, is there, going into the actual toy after this concept art?
Well, one of them looks like it might be a four-seater, but beyond that, yeah. It looks very finalized even in these early stages.
Yeah, I guess because when I look at it, I'm looking at the presentation art, and then I'm looking at that concept as well, and thanks to Dan Kay for these images, they're amazing. And it looks as though the kind of more concept drawn one is they've stuck with the two seats. And you're right, the kind of the presentation art one looks much bigger, doesn't it? Like you could fit more people in.
Actually, it reminded me of that ride vehicle VAMP that they developed for that G.I. Joe ride, which still hasn't just shown up. I don't know what's going on there.
That is very true. Maybe I thought it was going to be used for what was it? The Adventure Camp, but I don't think it's got anything to do with that at the moment, has it?
No, that was a full-blown ride they were developing.
I know. Where did that go? We need to revisit that pretty soon. There's a really cute anecdote actually from Kirk Bazigian where he mentions, I'm not sure if you've seen this, I'm going to show it on the screen as well, but there's one of the early commercials for the Vamp, and it's for lots of different vehicles, but the Vamp's in it, and as the Vamp's being dragged along with, I think like the HAL like towing something along, as one of the scenes, the body just comes away from like the chassis of the vehicle, and they kept it in. Have you seen that yet?
I've probably seen that commercial more times than any other person, and that never noticed that. It's a feature, right?
I only noticed it because it was pointed out to me. It's one of those things like a stormtrooper hitting his head. You see the thing a million times and just never notice until one day maybe you do.
That's so true about the stormtrooper. I never noticed that until it was a big deal, until everyone was talking about it like years later. And it's really cute. Like the video's great. Like the kids is dragging it along. It works fine. Next scene it goes crunk, and it's like, well, we just ended up leaving it in, he said. So that was that's really funny. And it just kind of goes to, I mean, that kind of stuff really does lend itself to just how guerrilla warfare some of those commercials can be sometimes, can't they? Especially the early ones.
Yeah, who knows how many they even filmed in a day. They're just trying to push them all out.
I know some of those we're going to talk about live action commercials specifically with you, Phil, in the next panel, but obviously we're getting ahead of ourselves now. Is it around? Is it near you?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Brilliant. So, like, let's talk about this actual toy then. I mean, Pat, did you have this as a kid? Was this one of the vehicles you had as a nipper?
I did. Actually, there was another vehicle that I desperately wanted in 1983, and my mother's friend bought that vehicle for me and bought a Vamp for another kid and wrapped them both and accidentally swapped them. And at that point, my brother already had a Vamp. So I ended up with, because my brother didn't really play much with his G.I. Joes, I had a Vamp with a straight arm clutch that my brother technically owned. And then I had a Vamp with swivel arm clutch. So Vamp was a big one for me. I really did love it. And even whenever I got that instead of the thing that I'd been, bugging my mother to get, I was actually kind of happy to have a second Vamp because I really did love it.
That's amazing. And what about yourself, Phil? What your experiences with the Vamp early on?
So I'm a little bit younger, so I didn't actually get into G.I. Joe until around 87.
Until the 50th anniversary, right?
Yeah. I'm just Johnny come lately here. But, so the Vamp was long gone by the time I was on the shelves, and so I never even saw it until I became part of this community of collectors. And that's when I picked up my first one. It was probably around 99 or so. That was a junker. The gun was broken. It didn't have any of the gas cans or the steering wheel. I, started piecing it together later on, but then I realized part of the frame had broken on it. So
was it the one they used? Was it the one they used in the commercial? Do you reckon?
Maybe. It actually wasn't until about a month or two ago that I actually finally got my first decent, complete Mark I Vamp.
Nice.
So, this is technically my first one that's in all there.
I know it's got like a lot of the little pieces, got the little gas cans and that kind of stuff, but it feels like a solid little vehicle, doesn't it? Like it's just kind of, it's kind of tough. It can kind of withstand a lot of stuff. I know there's like certain clips can break if you're not too careful with them, and like most figures and vehicles and stuff at the time, but it was definitely one of those like little tough vehicles, wasn't it, that you could kind of take anywhere and just enjoy wherever you were.
Yeah. So you want to know where it broke on my first Vamp? Right here.
Oh,
right on the top.
On like one of the strongest points by the look of it as well.
Yeah, so it got crushed somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Someone stood on that, definitely.
Yeah.
It was a roller skate for sure.
Definitely. And also, it wasn't a write-off. You could still use it, so it's fine. It's only if it breaks.
A little Bondo when it's good.
Yeah, everything's fine. If it breaks and you can't use it anymore, then you're in trouble. Funny enough, actually, for myself, the first Vamp I kind of really was aware of, and I wasn't even like kind of around at the time, was the SAS Panther, which we'll get to a little bit later on. And that was interestingly enough, my initial introduction to that particular vehicle didn't know about the Vamp for years. Didn't know about it. It wasn't even a thing in my head. But we'll get to a few of those points a little bit later on. We also have, obviously in Dan's book, which we're kind of stealing for these kind of initial concepts and so on and so forth, we do have some information on Clutch as well, and obviously his initial concept. No beard. Which one do you prefer first, guys? Beard or no beard?
5 o'clock shadow. I got to go halfway. I actually think that Clutch is more of a he shaves every once in a while kind of guy, a little bit rough stubble. Yeah, that's what I think.
I like that. So that's a nice thought there, Pat. What about yourself, Phil? Are you a beard or no beard kind of guy?
I mean, that concept art really does show some very kissy lips, but I think I'm going to have to go with the beard.
Oh, in that case, I'm going to go with no beard because I love them kissy lips. What was interesting as well about this figure was that he had a very unique... Well, he had a unique torso, didn't he? Which at the time was almost unheard of with that line of figures. So that was like one of those things that kind of like stood out to me, and probably would have stood out to a lot of kids actually at the time, not myself obviously, but to a lot of kids at the time, that figure was actually really cool looking, a little bit of different design, a little bit different looking, comes with a vehicle. I mean, was that something that you noticed, Pat, on yours?
Of course. I had, in 82, by the time Christmas came around, I had the entire G.I. Joe toy line. Well, between me and my brother, we had the entire G.I. Joe toy line minus the Flak and Grunt. For whatever reason, those were the two things that we just didn't get. But looking at the figures, I was back then noticing all the differences on them. And I think between this and Steeler also having a unique torso kind of speaks to the fact that the Hasbro team was approaching the G.I. Joe toy line as a vehicle toy line with figures supplementing it whenever they were first developing it. So I think that may be characteristic of that you make the figure that comes with a vehicle actually a little more enticing than some of the things that you could get just carded.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. There's one other aspect that I have glossed over, and that is the whole shovel, no shovel scenario, guys. So obviously there was a Sears exclusive, wasn't there, with the Vamp and the Hal, which came, I think, majoritively with a shovel molded onto it. Not always with a shovel, right? But just the majority of them.
That's the running theory, yeah.
Yeah. With that said, the original Vamp went quiet for a time, but would resurface again and again and again over the years. And video too. In 2004, a Toys R Us exclusive set featuring the Vamp with twin battle gun in olive drab and 3 figures, Chief Torpedo, Big Brawler and Pathfinder, were released using a retooled body that actually appeared 3 years prior, but we shall cover that shortly. The same build was used again for a convention exclusive in 2007 and gave us the first and only Mark V by name. We also got a modern upgrade for the 25th line in 2008 and was effectively retooled to accommodate the slightly larger figures, and they added a clip to the front fender in order to have a removable shovel. In classic codename legal issues, they also had to change the driver's name to Double Clutch, but we all knew it was Clutch. In 2010, the Vamp got a brand new body for the Pursuit of Cobra with a brilliant new Double Clutch as well. It was also in a subtle tan colour, which threw the whole Mark I, Mark II deco order out of the window. That newer body was also later used for the 2012 Retaliation Ninja Combat Cruiser and the controversial 5-point of articulation Night Fox driver that came with it. It got one more use in 2014's Eco Warriors concept as the exclusive G.I. Joe Rescue Ops 4x4. A huge amount of merchandise came out of that original Vamp, including a die-cast vehicle, a Revel model kit, a toy box. Also featured on a number of items including colouring books, school cases, paint by numbers, and on numerous card sets. It was a very popular vehicle. Did you guys notice that popularity at the time?
I sure did. I do have the toy box over in the room next to me. It was one of the things that I thought was one of the cooler items that was probably a licensed item from Hasbro. I think that it being 1982 and there not being that large of a toy line to license, people were gravitating toward what they could.
Yeah.
And the Vamp almost to me is the perfect size vehicle. It holds more than one figure. It's not too large for a kid to wield. It's not tiny.
Sorry, I just had a vision of a kid with a Vamp like wielding it like a sword.
Well, I just picture like the Defiant. While that is one of my favorite things, like a kid really moving around a Defiant is a little bit tough, but a Vamp is a very nice size to hop in the car and go somewhere, go to grandma's house or whatever with the Vamp. So I think that the Vamp is one of those perfect size vehicles, something that fits inside a shoebox.
Isn't it funny that everyone, you say that thing about popping over to grandma's house, and it's like everybody seems to have that like experience, don't they? It's like, we're going to grandma's and it's, it's right, what figures am I taking? What toys am I taking? That kind of thing. Yeah. Everyone seems to have a similar experience, and it's like global almost, isn't it?
It was an hour drive to my grandmother's house. The car rides were boring.
Exactly. You need Defiant in the back with Phil, just like that up against the window. Amazing. Swinging back to the 80s again, and the original Vamp was already yesterday's news. It didn't take long to repurpose the popular Vamp into its second iteration. In 1984, the green was gone, replaced by a tan colour for desert operations, and it had a roof and doors included this time because of sand. Even Clutch followed suit, decking himself out in tan and brown to match his vehicle. The show off. The shovel remained from the Sears exclusive, but a new item appeared for the hood/bonnet. I'm talking UK and US right now. Described as a hood pack in the blueprints, I always saw it as a sleeping bag. The twin cannons had also been sacrificed for a missile launcher with 4 missiles. This truly was a significant upgrade to the original, and way more interesting than a simple repaint would have offered. Tan Clutch also became the default in the Sunbow series before being sort of killed off/shifted into a parallel dimension in Worlds Without End, along with Grunt and Steeler. A micro vehicle was made for the Mark II, released in 1991, primarily available through mail-in offers in the US, but also included on some single-card releases in Europe. The bigger version was re-released in 1988 as a mail-away, but with a few differences. It was made of a lighter brown plastic, it included gas cans instead of water cans, and had other small colour differences. In 2001, a light tan, very new looking Vamp came out under the name of the Desert Striker, including a number of newly tooled elements as well as a new Flint driver. The Mark II got a very new look for the 30th anniversary by name only in 2011, and in 2 different shades of green no less. Yep, not tan, green. Clutch was no more, and in his place was a very cool Steel Brigade Delta driver. More modern era Mark IIs were released during the 50th anniversary in tan and dark grey in the 2014 Danger at the Dock set. The most recent version hasn't come in the retro line, however. No, it is a Jada Toys Remote Control Mark II, and hasn't shipped yet, but will be available very soon. It's actually in stores as we speak. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit any figures, but looks pretty good with the classified scale. Here's a tough question then, gents. Which one do you prefer, the Mark I or the Mark II?
Mark I. The Mark II undoubtedly has a lot of enhancements and a lot of fun to it, but the one that I played with as a kid, I'm sure that comes into play. And just it looking more like it represents G.I. Joe, the Mark I is certainly a more classic vehicle than the Mark II.
And Phil?
Mark I, no question. I think part of that is upbringing, though. My dad was in the Army Reserves, so every once in a while I'd see him on base in his woodland camo fatigues, and all the vehicles there were a nice olive drab green. You go on TV, you watch reruns of MASH, they're olive drab Jeeps. You look all around. We didn't have anything in desert tan. We had them in green.
I see. It's really interesting that the nostalgia plays a huge part in this, and also, well, I say nostalgia, but also life experience too. And again, not seeing or knowing about the Vamp until much later on, it was also news to me that the Mark II Vamp existed, and so on and so forth. So I guess, like, for me, looking at it as I look at them, I'm drawn more to the Mark II, and I think it's because the extra additions, the different like weapon system, the tan color. I kind of think Clutch looks really cool, and plus I was a Sunbow kid, so I saw Clutch in tan most of the time, and it was interesting that the cartoon, had him in that color over the green, which I guess was I'm guessing was probably because he was making him slightly different to some of the other green characters that were on the show, but yeah. Quite interesting. 2 against 1 though, so you guys win that one. You've won that battle. But there'll be more. There'll be more battles as we go along. Next up then, I mean, it wasn't just the Joes who would benefit from this awesome vehicle though. No. Cobra got their own version in 1984 as well. Take it away, Disembodied Head Video, McLeod. The Vamp became so multi-purpose that it eventually ended up in Cobra's clutches, pun absolutely intended. In 1983, Canada got a straight-up Cobra version of the original 1982 Vamp with the MMS system as a Sears exclusive in all black, the Cobra Combat Set MSV. This was almost certainly the precursor to another Cobra version. Yes, in 1984, the same year as the Vamp Mark II, we got the Cobra Night Attack 4-wheel drive, aka the Stinger. This retool of the Mark II featured a new hood detail, a handrail and footstands on the rear, and a brand new weapon system in the form of a massive missile launcher. The swivel-arm Cobra officer got a lovely light grey repaint and became the Cobra Stinger driver, and Cobra now had two rivals in the multi-purpose attack vehicle department. The Stinger was a hit, showing up in the cartoon on multiple occasions, with the weapon system getting a real highlight in Worlds Without End again. Can you tell it's my favourite episode from the cartoon? Well, double episode. The Stinger also got a lot of love in the UK and was a firm fixture in the toy advertising and comics. It even had two separate releases, one as the Palatoy Night Attack Jeep in 1985 and a second release in the Hasbro International Heroes line in 1987. In 1998 we got a Toys R Us exclusive, only the name had changed as well as the driver and deco. Still effectively a Stinger, but was instead given the moniker of the Cobra Rattler 4-wheel drive. Yeah, we know. Also, a repainted Jinx was included as the Cobra operative Vipera. Both the figure and vehicle shared a similar black, dark blue and white phasing deco. Of course, a modern Stinger was almost certainly going to happen, and it did in 2009 in an internet-exclusive wave of vehicles. The Stinger driver was also present. 2 years later, the Collectors Club released a Python Patrol repaint with the Python Motor Viper. The Stinger is an absolute beauty in my opinion. I absolutely love this. What I've always thought is just how well these versions differentiate from one another, despite being like effectively the same base body. Like the modifications on each seem to do just enough to separate them into kind of iconic vehicles in their own right, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that's both evocative of real-world situations where same base body can be outfitted in various configurations, even for different various militaries, but also works in universe, with Destro's Mars Corporation specifically being said that it'll sell to both sides of a conflict.
Yeah, that is actually a really good point, and some like in again like a bit of headcanon going on there as well, isn't there? Like I do like that. I also we'll get to this point a bit later on as well, but the amount of like repaints that go on with these things, I like it when they put a bit of storyline behind it, and obviously we'll find something out a little bit later on about the Tiger Force kind of aspect and how there was a backstory behind that. I really love those kind of aspects, and I love it when Hasbro do go that kind of extra yard to do that, rather than just here's your repainted vehicle, off you go kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, was the Stinger a favourite of yours, Pat?
I didn't have one as a kid. I do have one of these though. Really excited to have gotten this.
Oh my goodness, that's the MSV, right?
It is, yeah. Though the first Stinger that I got actually was the mail-in that has darker roof and doors than the regular one. The thing that I think about when I think about the Stinger is something that I think Kirk said at a convention, that one of the things they started looking at the vehicles to do was to have more spaces for figures to stand. And the Stinger has that back plate on it where you can actually have a couple of figures stand on the back of it. And I think that is a great feature, because if you look at the 1982 vehicle lineup, there aren't a whole lot of foot pegs. There aren't foot pegs other than I think the Jump has a foot peg for the figure to just stand on the platform. And I think there's one on the HAL, and I don't know if there are any others across the entire toy line.
Yeah, but certainly not on like the side of a vehicle like the A.R.M.O.R Striker, for example, which had those two side like things where you could hold onto the bar at the top and stick the foot peg in and everything.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been great to have been able to have like a couple of spots on the side of maybe the Mobat to have the entire 1982 G.I. Joe team on the Mobat. That would have been a lot of fun.
On the treads, so that...
Right, yeah, just foot pegs and they could just go around.
Get crushed underneath. Amazing. No, you're right. You're right.
That they were looking to make sure that when you bought the vehicle, you were encouraged to buy even more figures. So additional foot pegs would encourage additional figure sales, and it made a lot of sense. And that's one of the things that I think is a great feature of the Stinger.
What was funny about that point you make about, like, you know, the incentive to buy more, I never needed incentive based on foot pegs on a vehicle. Like, what I found was that to me it was just like, the Ore Striker, oh, you can put the figure on the side, that's cool. It's like, you know, like that's more the response I would get as a child. It was never like, I need to get a few more figures to fill this Ore Striker out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that's exactly what they'd have been thinking, though. They'd have been thinking we need to incentivize more, you know, action figures. I don't think at any point I didn't want every single figure that they offered, you know, from the moment it was released. Yes, you want all of them, and you want multiples of the friggin' army builders. It's like, you know, that's what it is, you know. Oh, well, Phil, the Stinger, was that in your year group or not?
The first one I got was the Rattler in '98. But, you know, solid vehicle, the Rattler. Great deco. Still has the Black Widowed sticker on it, despite having a snake name. So, you know, I'm pretty sure it was meant to be a Stinger.
There was a lot of metaphor, kind of mixed metaphors, wasn't there, in that particular vehicle? And also to have like a random like delivery ninja driver, that was always quite interesting as well. But you know, that's what you get. I do like that Jinx repaint though. I think it's really, really cool. Still just looks like Jinx to me though. Jinx is one of those ones that's hard to kind of differentiate. I'm not sure about how you feel on that one.
Yeah, they tried to make her a new figure, but it just felt like Jinx in dark blue.
Well, next up then, and with everyone jumping on the Vamp bandwagon, or the Vamp wagon, yeah, the Dreadnoughs were not going to be left out. As if the Dreadnoughs were going to be left out, in 1986, the Stinger got an eye-catching makeover with the Dreadnought Ground Assault Sears exclusive. Yep, Sears love their Vamps and related family members. A 2-pack of vehicles also featured a repainted 1982 G.I. Joe Ram, released in the same year as the Swampfire, and with the same purple, teal and lime green colour scheme. It also changed colour when exposed to sunlight. The roof, panel, gull-wing doors, ram bar and rear deck panels were all photochromic. The vehicle was given new life once more, and considering the Knocks had used the Stinger a lot in the cartoon, it made sense to give them a personalised version. And let's face it, this one is standing out in a collection of Vamps and Stingers. The modern era finally gave us a brand new Ground Assault Stinger courtesy of the Collectors Club, as well as a heart-wrencher in 2018, only without the colour change feature. Still striking nonetheless. So the Ground Assault version is definitely one of the standout decos for me and the family. Love the additional colour change. Do either of you guys have these?
Not really. I count it as a no. I have like the shell of one, but I don't have all the pieces. So essentially, no, because all the value of those Dreadnock Ground Assault and Air Assault things are usually in the smaller pieces that tend to break very easily. So the truthful answer is no, although I guess if you looked around, you'd probably find a shell of one. I'm sure you'd find a shell of one around here somewhere.
I'm going to try. I'm looking now, I can't see it. Is that it? No, that's not it. I can't find it. Sorry. You're gonna have to show us. Just dig through everything right now, Pat. Stop what you're doing. Dig through everything. Find it.
Dig through my entire basement. Yeah.
I must admit, like, this was another one that passed me by in terms of knowing it existed until later years, and then it still didn't dawn on me that it was a Vamp repaint. I know that's the dumbest thing ever, or like, you know, a Stinger repaint, or whatever you want to say. But like, I did not just notice. I just only ever saw the front, the artwork, and it never dawned on me. Then again, I wasn't really paying that much attention at the time, and yeah, it looks kind of cool. I do kind of want a set of these, and the Air Assault as well. Like, they're quite an interesting idea to give the Dreadnoughs these particular vehicles, wasn't it?
You know, anytime you get a biker gang more vehicles that aren't bikes, it's a little weird, but they needed something to move around in because they were definitely mobile in the comics and the cartoons, and you didn't really get that in the mainstream toy line. Yeah,
like there was only one Dreadnock cycle, wasn't there, that kind of ever came out, but in the vintage line.
Came out the next year.
Like, and again, they probably wanted to get multiples of those so that they could all sit on them. But then we were getting like Zanzibar's Air Skiff and the Thunder Machine, and it's like the flood of like vehicles that they had at that point. But I must admit, I think when my Dreadnock's toys, I just had the Thunder Machine, and they would like it was like the Ore Striker, everyone hanging on the sides, on the back, stuffed in the three of them in the front, if you could even like one like across the other two. Like that's kind of how my Dreadnoughts got around. It was in one vehicle.
I mean, it's a very Mad Max. It fits.
Or jumping off like with like sniffing paint or whatever it is they huff. Well, that's the ground assault. Again, I have to say, like, I love that deco though. I really love the deco on that, and the fact that it kind of matches the swamp fire is really cool. Why do you think they went with a different deco for the air assault? Is that just to kind of separate the two sets? Because it just seems odd to me that they didn't uniform it.
I'd imagine that it was just to offer some variety. I really think that that's probably what it was. They still are. They feel a little cohesive to me in between the two of them. But yeah, I think it just, if you get the four of them together, I don't know that you don't feel that they belong together because of the fact that they have a little bit of different colors. But I think that they look good together, even though they're different.
No, they do. They look cool. It just always surprised me that they didn't go full on swamp fire kind of.
Honestly, that they have any color coordination at all seems a little much for the way the Dreadnoughts think.
So true.
You know.
So true.
It's true.
They've only got like 6 buckets of paint in the shack. That's all they have. So they're just using those. That's why. The ground assault was a crazy deco indeed, but it has nothing on the next featured family member. In 1988, G.I. Joe added an inspired sub-team to the ranks in order to get some new use out of some previous figures. Tiger Force was created as a jungle special missions team and included repainted figures and vehicles with the backstory that some of those vehicles were stolen Cobra property, repainted and reformatted to use in the ongoing battle. In 1989, 2 more vehicles were added to the ranks, the Tigerfish, a repainted Devilfish, and the Tiger Sting. Now the insinuation here is that this was a captured Cobra Stinger, repainted and reformatted, etc. But it's interesting to note a few very cool differences. The Tiger Sting is mainly a Vamp Mark II, with elements of the original in there as well. For one thing, due to the awesome tiger face and stripes deco, they decided to use the older bodywork for the original Vamp that had no shovel on the front fender, allowing for a cleaner application of the eye deco. They also used the rear rack and gas cans from the first version. The missile rack, roof and doors, etc. are all from the Mark II. Now, there were Joe vehicles in the line, so it's not that weird. I just enjoyed the use of the name and the fact that in the fictional story, and more likely so my own headcanon, they refitted a number of elements to the vehicle after they stole it from Cobra, effectively making it an unnecessary steal when they could have just repainted a Mark II that they already had. Definitely something I didn't notice as a kid, but it makes for fun world building, even if in real life it was more about what they had at their disposal. The only downside for me was not having a Tiger Force clutch driver or even a new character included for this rather special vehicle. In 2015, the Collectors Club struck gold again with a huge Tiger Force exclusive rollout of figures and vehicles in one of my all-time favourite concepts. Included in there was a modern Tiger Sting packaged in a bag with Sergeant Katzenbogen, aka Tiger Force Bazooka, effectively a repainted modern Mark II Vamp and simply one of my most treasured items in my Joe collection. Yeah, this has to be my favourite of all the Vamp family vehicles. I'm just a sucker for Tiger Force. I know I probably read far too much into that particular vehicle, but it just stands out for me that they wanted to highlight the Sting part of the name. And honestly, it's better than Tiger Vamp Mark II with elements of 1982 Vamp. I want to see that on a box, actually. Can I Photoshop that? But it's I just think it's amazing. Were you guys sad there wasn't a Tiger Force clutch, though?
I'm sad there's not more Tiger Force anything, but, you know, I love the Tiger Force. It makes no sense. It's not cohesive, but it's fun. And who doesn't want fun toys?
That's such a good point. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all, does it? And I absolutely adore it. I don't know what it is. It's just that color combination, the fact that there's a tiger involved. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's one of the good things about all these repaints is that they don't have to make sense in the story world for them to be cool toys. You know, the toy line is still a toy line and is allowed to repaint something into something that's fun, and then the storyline can kind of follow that and make an explanation for it, and we get to have our cool toys.
Absolutely. And Pat, you actually have a cheeky Tiger Force related Vamp, do you not?
I do, actually, yeah. Let me see if I can pull it out here. I have a...
It's hiding under the ground assault shell that you've got.
Actually, it was hiding underneath a pre-production something else.
Ooh, that's for the next panel. Spoiler alert. I'm leaving that in. That was a beautiful spoiler alert.
Yeah, just in your seats, people.
This is very strange. I don't know that I've ever seen one of these carded. There does appear to be a hole in the bottom of it where it probably was screwed down to a package of some sort. That's what I am imagining.
Interesting.
But the face of it is definitely intended to be Tiger Force. It has a very weird deco. It's very much a bootleg with, broken parts and brittle plastic kind of crushed in there at the top.
I love it.
But I've not seen anyone else with one of these. I don't know where this one came from.
I think you just made it, didn't you? You just made it yourself out of paper and dog turds.
I got it from China, is all I know.
It's amazing. I bloody love it. And we'll talk about... I mean, there's other things we don't really mention in this particular panel that I know Dan will mention when he does his little chat with Brian, either before this or after this. I have no idea where it's going to go right now. But he talks about Hungarian bootlegs of this vehicle, and they are amazing, aren't they? And I'll let Dan talk about that because that's it. But we're talking about it here because obviously it's part of the family tree, I guess. But those bootlegs are insane, and the colours are just wild.
We probably should also mention that the American Tiger Sting is very different than the European one, because the European one used the gas cans and more of the Vamp Mark II than the American one, correct?
Absolutely. And it's a good thing you mentioned that, because we're not going to cover it in the foreign versions, and we're not going to cover it. So it's a perfect time to mention that, Pat. Thank you very much. Slight differences there, 100%. And there was always something different with the European releases, whether it be like a shade of the colour that was used, or the plastic was slightly different, or whatever it may be. There was always something slightly different, wasn't there? I remember I think the Havoc has some really strong colour differences, especially in the missiles, doesn't it? It's almost like an orange almost, isn't it?
I think anytime there's red on a vehicle, Nomad's Damon has told me if you see red or green on a vehicle, chances are in Europe it's going to be different.
Yeah, and it's so true. And it's also funny when I see certain US versions of vehicles, I sometimes think that doesn't look legit. I wonder if it's a bootleg. I'm thinking like the originals where it was originated from. I'm like, no, they're the bootlegs. Clearly, the one I have, the UK one, that's real. So it's funny the perspectives, how they change.
And in story, I guess you could say that one of them should be called like the Tiger Sting. Maybe that would be no, I guess the back end is different. One of them could be a stolen Tiger Sting. The other one could be a stolen Dreadnock Ground Assault.
There you go. Tiger
Dreadnock Ground Assault.
There you go.
That's a very catchy name, though.
There's me thinking really complicated things like, they've stolen a Stinger and they've changed the weapons. No, they've literally stolen what it would be, which is the ground assault. Thank you, Pat.
There's only one vehicle, and they just keep stealing it back and forth. It was the Vamp, then it's the Stinger, then it's the Vamp Mark II, then it's the Dreadnought Ground.
They have very short leases.
You never ever saw them in the same place at the same time. That is so true. Right then, well, it wasn't just, speaking of the USA, and when we were talking about bootlegs, it wasn't just the USA who got all the Vamps. And I have to read the title out because it's one of my favourites. All these bloody foreigners coming over here taking our Vamps.
They took our Vamp.
As I mentioned previously, the United Kingdom had a few Vamp family vehicles, starting with the 1983 Palitoy SAS Panther, a complete reuse of the original 1982 Vamp in the black and yellow, only with a slightly repainted Snake Eyes figure called Stalker as the driver. Not confusing at all. We had a window box version in 83, and it was re-released the following year in a picture box. We almost had a Special Weapons Force Vamp as well in a beautiful fresh white deco, which most likely would have come with Bombardier, but we don't need to get into that unreleased history lesson right now, do we? As previously mentioned, we also got two different releases for the Night Attack Jeep, Palitoy 1985 and Hasbro International Heroes in 1987. In 1984, Brazil got the Jipe de Ataque, aka the Attack Jeep, for their Estrela Comandos MSAO line. It was a straight-up 1982 Vamp mold that was used. Japan got a Takara Vamp in 1986 with a few interesting aspects. Even though it was a green Vamp with a shovel on the fender, it came with tan clutch from the Mark II version. Also, the artwork looks like it was used from the Sears exclusive Vamp and Howl, with Rakondo and Mutt in the seats. Then came Fun School India. Not only did they get a 1982 Vamp, and despite an image of clutch on the box, it was a random figure that was included, they also got 3 other variations. An MRF racing Jeep in red and white, with shovel and a spare tyre where the usual weapon system would go, a police rescue squad Jeep in blue and white, and then again single boxed with a different shade of blue. Now, dates with these are all over the place, with the police squad set hitting around 1995 and the others in 2000. The Mark II also got a release in Brazil in 1985 as the Blindado de Assalto. Lots and lots of foreign Vamps, and they're all pretty brilliant. So many versions of this vehicle, and we're not even finished yet, guys. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Any of those from the foreign versions that kind of stand out to you?
I have the MRF racing Jeep. I think it's great. I stick the paratrooper figure in there because that combination of crazy legs head with beachhead body in the upper half in the red just kind of fits perfectly as like a racing driver with little goggles on it.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I had the police Jeep. I don't have the Super Cup to go in it, which makes me sad. So it is driverless. But you also forgot one.
And also Fun School has this one just recently, a Pickles Jeep.
Amazing. As if by magic, Pat. Where did that come from? Were you sitting on that?
It's been next to me here since while we've been doing all of these
all the weeklies.
This is kind of sad. This is very revealing. I open it up and you can see that the accessories for it here are still bagged. So I've not fully opened this one.
That's not sad. That's totally fine. I understand. That's really nice, isn't it? I really like that.
I do too. It's nice. I like the addition of an extra wheel on the back. That's certainly a very creative thing that they had done with the MRF racing Jeep, and then to do it again with the Giggles Jeep, I'm good with it. I like it.
Is it removable, or have they just literally glued it on there?
It spins around, so I get the feeling that it's screwed on. And honestly, some of these Fun School Jeeps, I think, what were these going for when they first hit, Philip? How much were they initially?
I think I got mine for like 25 shipped from India. It was real cheap.
I thought that when they first hit, I remember seeing somebody charging like $60 for them because there was a little bit of a panic to get them. But with Fun School stuff, at some point, if it's a new Fun School thing, they're going to make it in large numbers. I think I paid about $20 for mine as well. And you can still get the MRF Jeep. I think I've seen that with the police Jeep bundled for $30.
Wow.
So they're very available and very affordable. It's a fun thing to collect, in my opinion. All the various... It's definitely a deep rabbit hole, all the various international Vamps. And I probably would have tried to do it if I didn't realize just how deep it goes. I don't think that I can do all of that.
I know, when we start factoring in Hungarian bootlegs and random bootlegs that no one even knew existed, it's like, okay. No, that's awesome, guys. And thank you very much for adding that extra Giggles Jeep in there, which I absolutely adore. I adore it for the name. I mean, that is just, well, hey, fun. We don't even have guns on it. It's just a spare tire. But, you
look on the box, they try to sell it as an educational toy.
I love it. Love it. And also, I've got to say, I love the darker green on that. I think it's really sexy.
Develops motor skills.
Stimulates senses. Encourages curiosity and discovery. I like it. I can think of a number of things that do this exact same 3 things that we can't talk about on a family panel. And that leads us into the stragglers. And here they are. What do you mean there are more? Well, yes, we got a couple more specific versions of this incredibly versatile vehicle. Firstly, in 1994 for the Street Fighter movie line, a retooled and frankly bonkers new version was crafted from the Mark II with a heavily modified missile rack in a green, light grey and black deco. Finally, in 2013, a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Transformers crossover saw the reuse of the modern version 1 Vamp as Autobot Hound. The epic conclusion box set came with the Baroness version 17, Bludgeon, Snake Eyes version 66, and Autobot Jetfire. Wow. Lots and lots of versions of this Vamp, guys. And that's it, really. Or is it? Have we got any more cheeky versions to mention? I suppose we have. The latest Jada Toys Nano Hollywood Rides products, featuring the Mark II Vamp in a 3-pack with a Snowcat, and the topic of our next panel, the Hiss Tank, and the first Vamp in a larger 132 scale with what looks to be Duke in package. First up then, lads, are we enjoying these mini vehicles from Jada?
I am, though I find it curious that the first 3 vehicles they picked are also vehicles that were in the micro vehicles line in the exact same scale.
That's a very good point, actually. They were, weren't they? Are you pointing at yours there? There he is.
Just getting one out.
So cute.
Yeah, rolling wheels, though, this time around, so different than the micro vehicles. I enjoy them. The thing that I really want from these, though, is a lot more of them. I want to see a lot of G.I. Joe vehicles in this size.
Agreed on that one. I want to see playsets. I want to see like an HQ or a tactical battle platform. Just one of the play sets that would work really well with the vehicles interacting with them, and also like the Terradrome, which I think we mentioned on a weekly not too long ago, Pat. But the Firebat coming out of that would be great, wouldn't it?
You troll all the fans by announcing a new flag coming.
Well, that'd be great. A flag that was like
Strikers to land and conquests for sure. A new flag for sure. Yeah,
that big.
They could, I mean, you could get away with like, that could be like the deluxe size, couldn't it? That could be like the big thing they do. And it would still only be about that big. But like, I think that would be so adorable. I want all of it. I want all of our stuff in miniatures. What is that? There must be some sort of weird collector mindset going on here where we want tiny things of things we already have. Because I certainly have that feeling.
I think that's just an action figure toy buyer mindset to begin with. We like small things. The little action figure representative of people, and then we want vehicles and places to go with. We just want our own miniature world. And I have noticed I really like miniatures too when I see them.
Absolutely. In all facets, like tabletop gaming. I love seeing the little miniature figures that they have for those. You know, all that kind of stuff too. Like it's just weird. And anytime I see anything on the shelves, even if I'm not a fan of it, I'm like, I kind of want that pack of 3 characters I have no connection with whatsoever.
Walking through a hobby store and finding the little furniture they have for the doll houses, you're like,
exactly the same feeling right there. Yeah, Pat, like, okay, one vehicle, you get one. This is a slightly sidetracked. You get one choice. What vehicle are you going to get in the Jada toys that you want to see? Just one choice. Make it a good one. That hasn't been made already, or that we don't know is coming because we've seen that like lineup of vehicles. Give me a vehicle that you would love to see.
I'm going to say that there's another very classic G.I. Joe vehicle that we saw a lot of, but strangely doesn't quite get as much exposure as the Vamp does now, and that's the Skyhawk.
Ooh,
I kind of feel like the Skyhawk is a very signature G.I. Joe vehicle, and because
Sunbow cartoon definitely as well.
Like, if you really look across other toys, I've seen the Lamborghini show up again, the Lamborghini Cheetah show up again in bootlegs, and think, well, they're copying the Vamp, and they probably are. But it did exist in model kits and Omika vehicles, and it existed as a toy prior to the Vamp.
As did the XR311.
Right. So it's one of those things that I kind of think that something that's a little more built from the ground up by Hasbro to be on the G.I. Joe side that also is very backdated and early in the brand. You kind of have the Skyhawk. Nice. I kind of think that it gets overlooked a lot.
That's a good one, and also it was massive in the cartoon as well. It was a go-to Sunbow, and also appeared in Worlds Without End, my favourite ever double episode. Thanks for that, Pat. Phil, give me one vehicle, mate. One choice. You only get one, and then I have to murder both of you.
Oh, do I have to answer right now?
Well, yeah. Well, you could just leave it until like you really want to die, and then I'll.
So I'm like 87 years old. Okay, I'm ready now. The MCC.
Oh yes. So are we talking? Hang on. Are we talking the mobile command center, or are we talking the missile? Okay. Wicked.
That is a vehicle, but it's also a playset.
That would be great.
I mean, you could fit your little mini figures in there.
Not just that, but you could also have your your Sergeant Slaughter's Triple T or your Sergeant Slammer's
mini
Triple
vehicle
T.
in there in the repair bay. Yeah,
that could come with it. I know it was on the artwork, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it was on the artwork. Yeah.
The engine came with it, but not the actual vehicle.
It wasn't. There was an AR Striker engine. Yeah, the AR Striker engine came with it, didn't it?
Yeah.
But like, I'm pretty sure on the artwork there was a Triple T tank in the engine bay, and I'd be all up for if they were going to do an MCC, if they were going to do it, to have that cheeky little bad boy in there. I'm going to go with one that hasn't been shown yet, but is on all the friggin' artwork, and it's one of my favourite vehicles of all time, and it's the AR Striker, baby. I'd love to see that. And if that doesn't come in the Jada Toys line, then I quit life, honestly. That's just the worst thing to not have, yet have on literally... It's on every Jada vehicle. It's even on the remote control Mark II packaging.
They got one piece of artwork.
You had one piece of artwork, guys. Well, anyway, that brings us to the end of our very first panel of the day. Join us again very soon for the Hiss Tank. And, of course, who wins out from these two iconic vehicles.